Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our midweek little bit of Hebrew as we continue in the book of Daniel in chapter 11. And we're picking up at verse 7, which you can see on your screen. We're reading from the Jewish Publication Society edition, JPS, and we're going to go through verses 7 through 9 today. But verse 7 is interesting. It says, "But one of the shoots of her roots shall stand up in his place and shall come into the army and shall enter into the stronghold of the king of the north and shall deal with them and shall prevail." Now, just to recap again, or if you're coming in and missed a few lessons, this is an angelic being, presumably Michael, Gabriel, talking with Daniel, interpreting the vision that Daniel was experiencing. But as we look into a little bit deeper in the Hebrew and we go to Bible Hub and using an interlinear format, here we see verse 7 starting, and the Hebrew might read Vaya Amad Mitznetzer Sha Rasheha Kano, and then Vayavo, and shall come. But the word that jumped out to me is this word translated as branch, which is Minitzetzer. And what started going through my mind, the combination of the branch with the roots. Those of you that may, be very well versed with your Bible may remember a verse that we're going to go to here in Isaiah 11. And in Isaiah chapter 11, verse 10, there's a biblical prophecy that says, "In that day there shall be a root of Jesse, and he shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious." And those of us who are Christians see this as a messianic prophecy of Jesus being out of the tribe of Jesse, the lineage of Jesse. And this root of Jesse is very prominent in Christian scholarship, Messianic scholarship, pointing to a prophecy of Jesus coming. And so when I saw that in the uh, Daniel here, it right away resonated with me and wanted to see, okay, well, how do the Jewish sages talk about this? So we go back to our JPS version and we drop down to the commentary for verse 7. And again, they come at it from a very literal viewpoint. Also remembering that this commentary was written hundreds, if maybe not 1,000 years after Daniel had received the words of this prophecy. So they're looking backwards and applying what they know about the history. And of course, that's the level at which they are interpreting this. And it's very proper in Jewish study. There's a little imagery. I'm looking for the word here. It's a uh, were words, the first word of the phrases create, you take the first letter and it creates another word and it gives you an indication. I'll get the name of it eventually here, but it's the term of it is paradise, and it is a word that starts out with the pashat, meaning the simple, um, straightforward reading of it. And so they are using a pashat here, or a very simple um, reading. The next would be the R for the remez, which means that as I'm reading it, something pricks my heart and I feel a motivation, a move of the spirit to dig deeper into this. And then after that would be the S, which would stand for um, the seeking, or the deeper meaning of this word. And then finally, then there's the darash at the end, which would be the more of a mystical, more of a spiritual, that might be, and usually is, completely different than the Peshat or the simple version. And so they're doing the Peshat here, which is just looking at historically, they feel this was the king of Egypt, and they give some strong references. And I believe from that level, they are correct. But of course, they don't look at it in the deeper meaning, in the meaning that has been revealed that we look at in a messianic frame of mind, where we see these words that, again, a branch and root. And if we unpack these, the netzer, you'll see it's nothing striking about it, but it does also give the reference of a descendant, which is what we are, definitely looking at as we dig deeper into this, and we want to find this meaning of, is this talking about someone? Is this pointing towards it? And we see it in the definite messianic reference. And of course, here is what Bible Hub brings out also, because they are run by a Christian organization. And it brings this out as a messianic hope about this root of David. And so I just want to bring that out here so that you can see how these words, even though they may seem obscure, that this word of a root and offspring of David plays in through the Hebrew and can be definitely followed by being aware of these Hebrew words. So the next part of this we're going to go to here is verse 8. And so in verse 8, and the angelic being is describing the imagery that he's seeing here of these gods. Notice that it is in a small g. What you're going to notice in the Hebrew is that there are no capitalizations. And so when we go to the eighth verse, you'll see that the word that they use for God here doesn't really look any different than what the word for the one true God is, Elohim, because the spelling is the same and there's no capitalization. So the translators are given that freedom to take the word in the context in which it was written to be understood, and that is why they did not capitalize the G in here, but they left it small because it's referring to the pagan gods that are associated with the idolatry, with the worship of those in leadership of those lands. That's why it's connected with the princes. And so that's why the translators felt to go in that direction and call it small g, and rightfully so. So as he's talking about their molten images, the precious vessels of silver and gold, again, trying to put ourselves in the mindset of what it was like to live in a pagan, idolatrous land. It's really hard for us because we grew up in more of a civilized culture where there's organized religion, there's churches on every corner. We can't think of what it would be like to change that mindset and be in a place where there were pagan temples on every corner, so to speak, and there were rituals occurring that were just in our minds would be so offensive and so horrendous, but yet were done in the name of their worship, and having the rulers of the country deeply entwined in the religious systems, the paganism that was there. It was a part of their system. They used it to control the people. They wanted them to all be the same, of the same mindset. You worship at the same places. You follow the same religious leaders. You follow the same leader of the country. And it was their way of providing unity and harmony and hopefully peacefulness, because they wanted their societies to be peaceful. And that's why when Judaism was involved and later on Christianity was involved, it caused them to try to eliminate it, because in their mind it was causing dissension. It was causing people not to be unified in following the leadership of the country, and it was something that they felt threatened by. And so that's what, try to keep that in mind as we look through this. So he's talking about the gold and the silver. He's talking about captivity in Egypt, which of course we're going to see happened here. And then the king of Egypt would hold off, desist for some years from the king of the north. So as we go to the commentator here, uh, for verse 8, talks about the capture of these images. Again, always looking at it from a standpoint of how it revolves around the nation of Israel. Then I saw something really interesting. It makes reference to the molten images, and then it quotes a man named Jerome. And any of us who have studied um, the ancient foundations of Christianity, the church fathers, as they're known, who were the ones that were on the scene after the apostles had passed away, um, would know the name of Jerome because he was a church father who was very instrumental in a monumental part of Christianity, and that is of translating the Hebrew and the Greek uh, Bible into Latin. And he was given that charge, by the powers that were developed around the fourth century. But to find him mentioned in a Jewish commentary here, in a Jewish publication, really piqued my interest. So did it for purposes of helping all of us to just, see who Jerome was. Go to Rabbi Google here, but look at it from I put in Jewish historian, even though I know he wasn't, but the AI overview put it together in a way that would fit with what we were looking at here to support our study. So it mentions that he lived from the fourth into the fifth century, and he wasn't a Jewish historian, but he was a master Hebraist, meaning he knew the Hebrew language, and he had a reputation of being involved with the other Jewish teachers and worked with them while he put together the Latin Vulgate. And Vulgate just means common, the common language, a common Latin language, which became the main Bible for the church at that time, basically until Martin Luther and the Reformation. And Wycliffe, Tinsdale, were also instrumental in breaking away from the Latin Vulgate. But that was over 1,000 years afterwards. So for 1,000 years, the church as it existed used this Latin Vulgate, and it was all based upon what Jerome put together, and it heavily influenced the development of the Christian movement later on until about the 13th century, right? 14th century, when another scholar named um, Erasmus put together the Greek text and kind of gathered it together. And he also relied heavily on the Latin Vulgate to champion his collection and put that together. So here you see how he's very widely noted, but here respected by the Jewish scholars, and so much that he made it into their commentary here. And I thought that was kind of interesting of the familiarity they had with him and knowing what his role was at that time. And so that's where we're going to stop today at the end of verse 9. Some of these are very interesting passages. To finish verse 9, it just says, "And he shall come to the kingdom of the king of the south and then return to his own land." There's a lot of specificity here and intricate details of telling when this would happen. And of course, the Jews in their commentary come back and say, okay, here's who he was. It was Seleucus. And he came back within 2 years, reestablished his authority. And so they are documenting that, yes, everything that the angelic being told Daniel, we find historically that it has come to pass. And so, again, very compelling for substantiation of the prophecy of the Hebrew Bible, of the verses here, showing that they have come to pass, and all intended to build faith in the reception of these words and that they were prophecy that was then fulfilled. So I hope you enjoyed this little study. Pray again that you are enjoying the Hebrew viewpoint, knowing that it can yield just great insights into deeper knowledge of God's word as he's given it to us. So God bless you, and see you again next time. Bye-bye.